You're tuned in to the American Cream. The American Cream. The American Cream. A show for people seeking truth about money and how to really achieve the American dream with cream. During the next hour, you're invited to learn how credit, real estate, entrepreneurship, assets, and mindset are essential to helping you achieve the American dream. American dream. American dream. Please join your host, Hyacinth Henderson, for today's episode.
Hi, and welcome back to the American Cream Podcast. I'm your host, Hyacinth Henderson, and today I have the absolute pleasure and honor of interviewing Ms. Alsion Roach.
Hi, Hyacinth. Oh my God, it's such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for agreeing to do this podcast with me. Thank you so much for being here. And I must tell the audience about the way that we met and the way that we connected, right? I think it was maybe about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago.
3 years ago, yes.
3 years ago on social media.
Yes.
On Facebook.
Yes.
Someone had posted an article. You had just done an interview, and I read the article.
Yes.
And I read it, and I was so ecstatic and fascinated. I immediately felt a shift. Just to learn about your background and what you're doing, and then to see you on social media and your posts and your personality resonate through your posts, I was like, whoa. So I was immediately intrigued, and I sent you a friend request, and you approved it. And we've kind of interacted ever since then. And, you know, I go back and forth to New York. Yes. I have friends in New York. I guess at some point I asked for your cell phone number. I told you I was going to be in town. Yes. And so we just kind of communicated. But this relationship, this connection has really blossomed beyond my wildest imaginations, beyond my wildest dreams. I'm just very grateful for it. And it's all very surreal how everything is happening. Before we get into where this connection has brought us to date, I would like for you to tell our audience a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your history, and then I'll backtrack and talk about how we ended up in this beautiful conference room in downtown Miami doing this podcast interview.
Oh, okay. Of course, my name is Alsion Roach, a 56-year-old mother of 3, former emerging market trader. My background is in the finance industry. I traded emerging market and debt capital market bonds for a number of years. And my focus mainly was in the Caribbean because I'm from the Caribbean. Right. I'm Jamaican, obviously. I live in New York, New Jersey, and Long Island. I am no longer in the finance space because about 2 years ago. Okay. Well, I have steps that are similar to a vision board. I don't call it a vision board. For me, they're steps. Okay. And the steps are, I need to have this, and this completed by this, and this. Okay. And so one of the steps on my, what some people call vision board, is to, by the age of 50, is to get out of that stressful environment of the financial industry. Today, I am the CEO of a cybersecurity company, which is something that I launched it 2 years ago, and it's something that I've been pondering about for the last 6 years as a means of transitioning out of the financial industry, but wanting to ensure that I generate the same amount of revenue because I love money. Right. I'm sorry, but I do, right? Yes. I love money. There's nothing wrong with loving money. Money is power. Money is king. It's what you do with the money. Absolutely. Right? And how you live with the money. Because I want to ensure that I generate the same amount of revenue that I did or close to when I was a banker. For about 6 or 7 months, I did my homework. Okay. And just zeroed in on the next big thing. And the next big thing I know for sure is going to be cybersecurity. So now I'm a cybersecurity analyst. I own a cybersecurity firm. I'm launching a skincare line. Okay.
Awesome. Well, we're going to get into all of that. So I want to go back to your time as a banker, your time on Wall Street, right? Mm-hmm. But before we get there, let's talk about how you and I ended up in this beautiful conference room right now in downtown Miami. So originally we were supposed to, well, let me not say supposed to. Originally we thought that we were going to do this interview via Skype because of the distance and the location. a few days ago, today's Sunday, so maybe 4 days ago, I received a call from Miss Roach inviting me to a dinner with the Prime Minister of Jamaica. And so here I am sitting in my office thinking, me attending a dinner with the Prime Minister of Jamaica. And then she says, and oh, by the way, while I'm in town, we can record the podcast interview as well. Yes. So let's talk about alignment, faith, energy, and the role that how it all works together. Because 3 years ago, when I read that article and I was so moved and then followed up with a friend request, I had no idea that 3 years later, I would be sitting in your presence right now conducting the podcast interview. And I definitely couldn't imagine that I would be at a private dinner, sitting at a dinner table with the Prime Minister of Jamaica.
Amazing, isn't it?
It was an absolutely amazing experience. Life in itself is amazing. The Prime Minister's energy and just the way he carries himself was just something to be admired. It's very admirable. He reminds me in a lot of ways, and I don't like to compare, but he does remind me in a lot of ways to our president, right? President Barack Obama, just with his openness and warmness, and then his intelligence. His speech was very moving as well. But it just all came very full circle for me. And as I sit here, I want the audience to know the power of energy, the power of relationships, the power of being a good person, and the power of really just moving in faith before you can see things. Because it's important. It's really what moves you to the next level, and helps you to accomplish your dreams. So one day I do hope to have the PM, the Prime Minister, on my podcast interview.
I can make that happen.
Awesome. That would be lovely. So stay tuned, stick around for that. But before we go any further, I did want to mention that. And I did also want to go back to your time spent in the financial industry, right? So you talked about emerging markets and trading international securities and bonds and things like that, of that nature. But for our audience, can we talk about what that is and how huge that is to be, number one, a woman of color in that position?
Yeah. And you know, it's actually a big thing. A lot of us don't realize this, but it's a big thing for a woman of color to sit on any trading floor.
Yes.
It's difficult. It's the most difficult thing to accomplish.
Yes.
It's difficult in many, many ways. It's difficult because people look at you. If you're dark skinned, immediately you're eliminated from the panel. If you're dark skinned and you look a certain way, you don't fit the look. You know, you're not tall and skinny and, you know, so forth, you know, immediately it just closes a lot of doors for you. So the way I ended up on the trading floor is by way of the mailroom.
Okay.
So I started at a company called Morgan Stanley.
Okay.
I was determined. My mom wanted me to be in the medical field. She wanted me to be a nurse. Most of the females in my family are nurses and so forth. But it's something that I really didn't want for myself. You know, I love fashion.
Okay.
And so because I love fashion, I wanted to, from an early age, the field that I ventured into would be something that would allow me to dress up.
Ah, okay.
Even though my mom, I disagreed with going into the medical field from a Caribbean parent. If they tell you that you have to do this, you have to do it. Right. And so I started nursing school, you know, and all along hated it. And know fully well that it wasn't my path. Okay. But I still had to.
Honor
right?
mommy, right?
And so halfway through nursing school, you know, one day I just stood up to my mom and I said, "This is not what I wanted to do." You know, of course, if you're not going to listen to her, you get kicked out of the house. Right. And so she literally threw me out. She said, "You got to leave. You can't live under my roof if you don't want to be a nurse." Okay. And so I ended up in a shelter, in a homeless shelter.
Was this in Jamaica?
No, it was in New York.
In New York, wow.
Yeah. It was in a homeless shelter. I actually ended up in a homeless shelter called Under 21 because I was the age under 21.
Wow.
It's Catholic Charities.
Wow. Which
will double back and you'll see my charity, the charity part of me is from ended up my time living in a homeless shelter.
Wow.
I ended up in a homeless shelter in New York, in Manhattan actually. And while in a homeless shelter, I would, in Manhattan, a group of nuns I lived with, and they would give me the token for the train fare. Then I'll take the train back to Brooklyn to school, and back and forth to school. One day I met with one of my counselors in school, and we talked about why there were I used to smile a lot, and she wanted to know why wasn't I smiling for the last month or so. And so I started crying, and so I started telling her what was happening in my life. I was living in a shelter now, and I I had no one, and I'm homeless. And so Miss Ginsburg, and so she actually started to shape my direction.
Wow.
She asked me questions like, what exactly would you like to do? Where do you want to go? And so I started telling her about this business thing that's in my head. And she says one day, oh, so maybe you need to be in the finance business. Maybe, you could start by being an accountant. And I don't even think at that time I knew what being in the finance business meant. But she directed my path.
How important is that?
Very much so.
Very important.
Very, very much so. And so she told me, you start at the bottom. And starting at the bottom meant that I just took any job that was offered to me. So my first interview was for something in the mailroom, and I took it. Stuffing envelopes. And then I worked my way up.
Wow. Onto the trading floor.
Onto the trading floor.
That is huge.
Yes.
That is huge. What a story. Talk about so many lessons there. Perseverance, determination, and really following your purpose and tapping into that. Because I know that there are so many people, when they have big dreams or they know that something doesn't feel right, the people that are closest to them sometimes don't understand it. It's not their dream. So they can't understand it, and they'll start to discourage them and kind of act out in the way that isn't beneficial. But here it was that as that happened, it pushed you along your path. You probably would have never in a million years thought that you would have ended up in a homeless shelter. But then meeting or engaging with a woman who encouraged you, who mentored you, and then you found your way in the mailroom of Morgan Stanley, and then on the trading floor. And then now here. Right. That's awesome. That in itself is very awesome. So talk to me about your time spent on the trading floor. How was that, your experience?
So it was difficult, actually. So at Morgan Stanley, I went from the mailroom to a department called operations. From the operations department, that's a support department that supports the traders. That department allowed for interaction with the traders. And so I once met a trader on the trading floor at this time. So I left Morgan Stanley, I was at HSBC, and I met a trader called Joe Masaya on the trading floor at HSBC. And so I was his P&L analyst, P&L meaning profit and loss analyst. And so he was so impressed by the reports, how I would deliver his daily reports each day, and each trader needs a P&L report to show them what their profit or losses were for the prior day. And so I would go up to the trading floor to deliver the reports. You'll spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes going over the reports, what the trades were for the day, blah, blah, blah. In 1996, my dad passed away. And so the morning that I got the news that he passed away in Jamaica, I still went into work. I went into the trading. I did my daily work. Went up to the trading floor to deliver the report to Joe, and he says, "Oh, isn't it my favorite P&L analyst? How are you doing today?" And I started crying. And I try not to cry at all. And he says, "Oh my God, Alsion, what's wrong?" And so I told my dad I passed away. And he said, "Oh my God." And, I remember so vividly as it was yesterday. He had a handkerchief, took it out and gave it to me, wiped my tears. And he says, "Look, come, let's go for a walk." And so we started talking, and he offered to help me I told him I had, my dad only had myself. I needed to make sure that he was buried properly. And so he offered to help me and so forth. At that time, I wasn't making, I think I was making maybe about $40,000 a year.
Okay.
Right. And so, when he offered to help in any way, and I thanked him. I went to Jamaica for, to bury my dad. And after that, I came back. Went back to the office, and he was the first one to reach out to see how I was doing. At that time, it was the O.J. Simpson trial that was going on, and there was a division in the office, right, amongst all the traders were against O.J. Simpson. But Joe was very mindful because I was a Black woman, and so he was, at that time, I'm not even sure if he was with or against O.J. Anytime I came around, he was very, very neutral. I remembered I came back from Jamaica, and one day Joe invited me to lunch. We went to lunch, and we were talking, and and he says, you're a very, very bright woman, and I would like to help you. And I think your way out of the back office, out of operations, is to get on the trading floor. And I said, Joe, that will never happen. I've asked several times, and they've said no. Each year, at the end of the year, you get a year-end review, and within the year-end review, you request what you would like to do next. And I've always asked to be on the trading floor. It was always denied. So Joe said, "Oh, I will help you." And so it came time for my end-of-year review. I reminded him. And so he called my boss and said, I would like Alsion to be upstairs with me on the desk.
Wow.
And that's how I got on the desk.
Wow.
And from there, I worked my way. I left HSBC. I went to Bear Stearns. And Bear Stearns is where I really, really flourished. At Bear Stearns, because I'm Jamaican, it opened up a lot of doors for me. Jamaica the economy stagnated, and so the government needed to price a lot of bonds. The government of Jamaica needed to price bonds to fill their, the gap between when they delivered their budgets. They needed to price bonds for infrastructure enhancement, development, and so forth. And at that time, there was a lot of money to be made. An emerging market country come into the market. Companies would charge them, so the interest rate on the security, and then also charge them what's called an underwriting fee. You would know about all of this.
Absolutely.
And then charge them a management fee. Right? So and all of that stuff, right? And so it was very pricey. If you're coming to the market looking for $500 million, the brokerage firm that prices that $500 million will get like $5 million in fees. So you will get $495 million,
which is it's a big discount.
Which is a big discount, right? So Jamaica has never defaulted on their loans, and so most brokerage firms, Salomon Brothers, Bear Stearns, Morgan Stanley, Lehman Brothers, they wanted to ensure that when Jamaica's coming to the market, they're the brokerage firm that gets to price the bonds. And so because I was Jamaican, the head of the trading floor saw that as an opportunity to use me to get Jamaica to come to Bear Stearns to price their bonds. And so as they used me, I used them.
Absolutely.
So I would say things like, I have no problem talking to the Minister of Finance, but I would like to do this, this, and that. And so in return, I would like to ensure that we have an agreement that I am going to get this, this, and that.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I sort of brokered while at Bear Stearns, making sure that the government of Jamaica would come to Bear Stearns, is Steve Harvey, which is a friend of mine, has this charity, a golf tournament that he does to raise funds for underprivileged kids and blah, blah, blah. And so Steve Harvey says, I'll do a golf tournament in Jamaica, we'll raise the funds, and then tell me what we'll do with the funds. And so one of the ideas we came up with is to put computers in the primary schools in Jamaica.
Wow.
And so I said to Bear Stearns, Steve Harvey is going to do this. I'll bring Steve Harvey up. We can talk to Steve Harvey about Bear Stearns will have to be the main sponsor. And they agreed.
Right. Something very notable about this entire story that you're reliving and documenting for us is that you asked.
Yes. Very important.
The ask is very important. So many people don't ask. As I'm hearing you share your story and relive these very important moments, you asked.
You have to ask. It's imperative, especially us.
Yes.
It's imperative that you ask for what you want.
Yes.
You cannot be afraid to ask. What the most that's going to be said is no.
Right.
Right? And if you hear no, you say, okay, you figure out why you received no, and you come back and you edit, reshuffle, and you ask again.
So you can get the yes.
So you can get the yes.
Did you ever have any fear when you were asking, or was it because of your, the life circumstances that you had come up through? Did that eliminate the fear? When did you understand that you had to kick fear to the curb or it would cripple you?
So I was raised with my grandma.
Okay.
And so I was taught by her that you always have to ask for what you want and never ever be afraid of asking. So because I had that instilled in me, I was, I just ask, and I know that, and I expect you to say yes, actually.
Okay.
Whatever time I ask for whatever I want, I expect a yes.
That's
I
important.
never expect a no.
Okay.
Never.
The expectation.
Oh, never. So if I hear a no, I look at you like, are you crazy?
Right. Okay.
You really said no to me?
Right. Okay.
You really need to rethink that no.
Right.
So I never expect anyone to say no to me.
Okay. I love that.
Just like the dinner last night you came to.
Yes.
There were folks that came to the dinner, and I said, this is a benefit dinner, and I want to check for $10,000.
Right.
And I don't expect them to say no, and they go say, yes. Yeah. Where do I write the check to?
Absolutely.
So you can't have this fear in you. It's just like, I don't want to wander off topic, but even just relationship.
Yes.
People enter into a relationship with this fear, this fear of, what if it doesn't work? What if, he's 10 years younger than me? What if you keep those what if at the back of your mind, things will fail.
Yes.
It will never work out. You absolutely have to know that if you enter into a relationship, it's going to work. It's for you.
Okay.
It's because it's the right timing and it's going to work. You should not have fear. Fear is not in my dictionary, actually.
Okay. I love that. This is my language. So this is what I strongly believe in. It's law of attraction, it's energy, it's quantum physics, it's everything wrapped up into one. And here you are living, breathing that. And I love, by the way, that you started the interview saying, I love money. Yeah. There is nothing wrong with loving money. No. So I'm noticing your words and your language. And as you tell your story, and I'm like, this is a master manifester. I'm sitting in front of right here. Yeah. So you asked for what you needed, what you wanted, with the expectation that you were going to get your yes, and you got your yeses. Yes. And so your time at Bear Stearns was very fruitful, right? Okay, very good. And so then again, you go back to is what some people call vision board. You may call it life goals, staying in touch with your purpose and understanding that I don't want to be in this position forever. Right. So I've worked my way up from the mailroom to the trading floor and being very important in my role and being very well known, by the way. It's right for being well and helping your home country as in the process. Talk about purpose and divine connections. Wow. But you knew that that's not something that you wanted to do forever. Right. So you transitioned out and you said, I needed to do what? Use the money that I have now as a tool to start another business. And so that is one of the things that we talk about so much on the American Cream podcast is that money is a tool. The role for money in your life is not to see how fast you can spend it on things that don't make more money for you. Money is a tool for you to use to make more money. So at that point you said, okay, let me do my research. Again, I paid attention to your language and you saw that cybersecurity was an industry and an area where there is a need. Yeah. So I think that's also very important to speak on people starting businesses just because they like the business versus people who start businesses where they know that there is a need for that business?
There are many businesses that I like, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a perfume addict.
Okay.
And so I dreamt of launching my own perfume line. Would that be profitable to me though? Right. I don't think so.
Okay.
Because the competition within that industry is very, very stiff. Cybersecurity, however, is an extremely lucrative industry. You're now in the age where you're having breaches every second.
Yes.
We have a Target, I think Visa, right? We had so many really huge company, Marriott.
Right. Recently.
Very recently. Right? And so, but, let's step away from the corporate breaches and just take a look on the layman's, your average person on the street that's, walking around, logging on to free Wi-Fi all over the place. And then next thing you hear is, oh my God, my bank account was wiped out. Right. Or I'm receiving all these emails from some crazy person in Africa telling me that I won $50 million. All of those are breaches. Your email was breached. Okay. Right? What I sat down and did was I took a hard look at, and I actually did a spreadsheet on this. Wow. I did a spreadsheet about 2 years ago. And the spreadsheet that I did spit out an analysis that tells me that in the next 4 years, the cybersecurity business is going to be $137 billion market share, right? And so I want a piece of that, right? I love money, and I want a piece of that. But aside from my wanting a piece of that, I see it as a way of helping people, which is something that I like to do as well. Yes. There's a charity side to me. And so I figured that if I learn about this market and I can somehow help my country, upgrade and do the cybersecurity audit in the hospital industry, in the school system, which I'm actually doing right now in Jamaica, that will somehow help my government to pull themselves from the third world norm into first world. Okay. I really honestly believe that cybersecurity is the only business right now to be in.
Wow. Okay. And so you're combining there again, service, purpose, passion, and with money.
Exactly.
I think that's key. I hope all the listeners out there are really taking in what this means and making the connection and understanding how important it is to make these types of decisions. I think when people make investments in general, so there are people who don't think about money as investing and using it as a tool, but then there are some people who understand that they need to make their money work for them. And so when they start to do that, they start to think about investments and decisions and things like that. So I would like to ask you, just know, and I think I have an idea based on the information that you're sharing with us so far, but what goes into your decisions to make investments? Like you talked about the spreadsheet and the industry and things like that. So does that overrule your emotions and your feelings, how you feel about an industry? Because you talked about perfume and you loving perfume, but you went in a completely opposite direction and went to cybersecurity. Yeah. So when you think about that, what type of role does that play? We talk about risk tolerance and things like that. What advice or what would you say is important to consider when you are saying, okay, I get it. I need to make my money work for me. I need to do something different. Maybe I need to start a second business so that I can have an additional stream of income. How does that look?
As it relates to investment, when I'm making an investment, so I have a very high risk tolerance, that, right? And so what I look at is the industry that I want to make the investment in, because I'm big on, I pay very, very keen attention to my ROI, right?
Return on investment.
Yes, return on investment. So I pay keen attention to that, right? And then how long can I leave my funds in the vehicle that I'm invested in? Not many of us are very liquid. And so if you're not very liquid, then you have to be mindful. Can you put $200,000 here for 5 years?
Okay.
And so I look at all those, fortunately for me, I have several ways of generating revenues. So I don't have the stress of, okay, can I afford to put 200,000 US dollars here for 5 years, right? But that's something that you really need to ensure that, because the penalties, the penalties if you invest in, let's say you put in a 401k, you're allowed to put in, the maximum is 18.5%. Yes, 18.5% of your salary for the year. And so your employer, like for me, my employees, I was matching them 100%.
Okay.
So if an employee put in 18,500 into the 401k for the year, I give them $18,500, right? So now your 401k is 18,500 you put in, I give 18,500. And so let's say you did that for 4 years or 5 years, and you go, oh my God, I now have $200,000. I want to buy a house. And you only, you went out and you look for a house that is $700,000, and you have to put 20% down, and you can't come up with a 20%. You probably have 15%, and you go, oh my God, I need an additional 5% to make up the 20%. Oh, I have $250,000 in my 401k. Let me take it out. So there are rules to that, right?
Absolutely.
You can do a hardship. You can borrow, they have an hardship withdrawal, which you have to pay back. It's borrowing a loan from yourself, you pay back. But if you just go take it out, not withdraw, just take it out, then there are penalties
Associated,
that is associated with that. Because you're really not supposed to take that out.
It's retirement.
It's retirement.
59.5.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And that's a problem that every day I get asked, oh my God, I just filed my taxes and now I owe $25,000 to the federal government and $5,000 to the state and blah, blah, blah. And I said, why? And because they withdrew from the 401k. So
interesting. Lots of good points. So knowing the rules is important, and knowing your risk tolerance.
That's right. Very important.
Very important. And then understanding what you need to be able to have liquid, what you can afford to tie up. So there's a lot that goes into making investment decisions and investment choices aside from, oh, I like it.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. And so something that you did mention was that you have multiple streams of income. That is like the winning phrase here on the American Cream podcast. Is something that I firmly believe in. I teach and I preach because some people don't understand the benefit of having multiple streams of income. I use the stove analogy, right? If you are cooking and you only have one pot on the stove, right? I love food, can you tell? So if you only have one pot on the stove and the fire goes out under that stove, what are you going to do?
Absolutely.
How are you going to eat? Think about when the government shut down. And people don't think in these terms because they feel like if they make $100,000 a year or $300,000 a year, that they're always going to be able to eat. And that is the equivalent of feeling like you have a beautiful Thanksgiving feast spread out in front of you on the table and believing and telling yourself that you never have to go get any more food.
Right.
This Thanksgiving meal is going to just last you forever. Not understanding and thinking about, no one would do that because we would think about the fact that the food is going to spoil. The other family members are going to eat the food. At some point, you're going to have to replenish it. And so when you talk about different streams of income, how did you make the decision to start additional sources of income? Was this something that your grandmother taught you as she raised you? Was this something that your friends were doing? Is it something that you learned in being in the finance industry?
No, so it wasn't something that my grandmother taught me, because my grandmother, now that you've asked that very important question, I actually hadn't thought about this, but my grandma actually I'm thinking about it really as I'm speaking. So she had about 3 different streams of income. But it's not something that she, that she taught us. We just, there's a running joke for many years about Jamaican immigrants.
Okay.
And the running joke is that Jamaican immigrants, when they come to the U.S., they'll have 4 or 5 jobs.
Yes.
And
yes.
they'll have 4 or 5 jobs, right? And so I think it's something that, we just, we have to figure out when you leave Jamaica to enter into the U.S. A lot of our immigrants are highly educated. The only reason why they leave is for opportunities.
Okay.
And they don't necessarily want to live here.
Okay.
You'll find that there's huge diaspora here in Miami, in South Florida, because of the warmth. We come from the warmth. In New York, there's huge diaspora as well, but you'll hear them say, I am making it my way real quickly because I want to head down south to the warmth or back to Jamaica. Even though, it wasn't something that, I sat down at the table and my grandmother said, in order to be successful, you need to have this, and that. She did it in a subtle way. And so growing up, because I saw her.
She demonstrated.
Yeah, I saw her just running the engine and running the ship and different ships.
Okay.
I just felt like it's something that I needed to do in order to be successful.
Okay. So the demonstration.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the best things that we can do, right, for ourselves and for other people, is don't talk about it, do it, demonstrate it. And so while she may have not gathered us around the table, she demonstrated. Now, as you reflect back, you're like, grandmother had 3 and 4 sources of income. And so it was just something that I saw. And you took that on yourself as well. Yeah. So you have multiple streams of income right now. We know CyberLock security is one of them.
Yes.
Would you like to talk about your other sources or any other projects you're working on?
Yeah, so I have my skincare line is coming up. Should be launching soon. It's just an anti-aging skincare. You get into, you don't have to worry because your skin is really pretty. You're very young. But once you hit like the 50, you're like, there's a wrinkle here. And I don't have it. Folks tells me, you don't have no wrinkle.
I don't see not one.
Yeah, when I say I'm 56, they're like, oh, really? So I like to think that it's the products that I've been using. I've been using a lot of homemade products.
Okay.
And so since they've been, but I'm not sure if they're lying or telling the truth, that your skin looks great, blah, 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 you look so great. I'm like, oh, maybe I should bottle up this and sell it and I could make some money here.
Ah.
So that's how that came about. I also I'm involved with a wine label.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
I gave you a bottle last night.
Yes, last night. Voga, right?
Voga,
yes.
Yeah. From, again, going back to my days in the finance industry, you go to a lot of business meetings and you're sitting around a table, you're the only female with a bunch of guys, and they order lunch and they all order wines and so forth, and you're drinking water and you feel like, wait a second, I'm left out here. So, I'm like, in order to be a part, I started ordering a glass of wine and I realized, I really like this. So, as I gain knowledge on different labels and regions and tastes and so forth, different collections, I realized that this is something that I really want to get involved with. Besides, I'm going to be quite honest with you.
Okay.
No matter how bad the economy is,
absolutely.
No matter how bad the economy is, the liquor business does phenomenal.
Absolutely.
If you're depressed, you drink.
Right.
When you're happy, you drink.
Yes. Yes. Both ends of the spectrum.
No matter which way.
You're right. And we will find money for a drink.
Exactly.
Very smart.
Exactly.
So I see that calculated decision there too. Yes. Very, very smart.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have Voga, the wine company, and then also the skincare line that I'm very excited about. And I don't see one wrinkle. And when you just said I'm 56 years old, I thought 56 where? So it does work.
Yes.
And it's something, especially women of color too, our skin is a little different. So we need to make sure if you're into that thing that you have a product that really helps you and works with you and not against your skin. Because I know that I've purchased products and I read all the reviews, but it just wasn't for me.
That's right.
So I'm excited about that, to hear that. And then a cybersecurity company as well. Okay. Awesome. What's your definition of wealth? How do you define wealth? I feel like now people have so many different definitions of wealth just because of what the mass marketing is telling them wealth is and what social media is telling them that wealth is. But really and truly, people are pretending to be wealthy and they're not really wealthy.
Yeah, so, and that's true. So my definition of wealth is when you have an abundance of anything that makes you truly happy. I value my health, right? And so I get up every morning and I say a word of prayer. And one thing that I thank God for is having an amazing, healthy inside, internally, I'm healthy. Because you hear the stories of, oh, this one had this surgery, that surgery, blah, blah, blah. And so, and it's scary, it scares me, and so I just think that I am very wealthy, not lucky.
Okay.
I am wealthy because I'm healthy.
Okay.
Right? Wealth is being happy.
Yes.
Truly
Yes.
happy.
Yes.
What brings you happiness to me is having good, amazing friends,
Yes.
being in a healthy relationship,
Yes.
meaning your spouse doesn't stress you. He's there with you head on, foot and foot, toe and toe,
Yes.
uplifting you. My fiance, we've been together for 4.5 years, and I've only made dinner once.
Wow.
And even this morning we were talking, and because I'm here in Miami, and so he called me. He's like, "Babe, did you have breakfast yet?" And I said, "No." And he said, "You need to go have something to eat." And I thought about it, and I said, "But if I was there, you would have made me breakfast."
Right.
And it dawned on me that, he's much younger than I am. He cooks. I don't do the laundry when he's around.
Wow.
He just gets up, and first of all, I can't even do the laundry like he does.
Okay.
Right? And I have a housekeeper, but the housekeeper is not around. He cleans.
Wow.
He's a hard worker. Gets up every morning at 4:00 for work, but he does the laundry. He cleans. He cooks. If we're running out, we run into a meeting, or even if we're going to dinner, I'll be in the shower. I get out, my clothes are on the bed.
Wow.
Right? And if it's a little wrinkle, he irons it and so forth. And that helps you.
Yes.
It helps you mentally.
Yes.
Right? It helps to take the stress, because let's face it, we're living in a stressful world.
Yes, and the last thing I need is to be stressed outside my home and to come
Exactly.
home to my partner
Exactly.
and be stressed.
So I come out of the shower and I see my clothes on the bed, and he has this thing of color coordinating. So, and way back when I didn't like it, but you know what? I don't say anything about it.
Right.
Because he's
It's
doing
his thing, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I don't say, and now I like it, because I go out and people say, "Oh my God, you guys are so cute, color coordinating." And I'm like, "Oh, so it's a cute thing." So I don't say
like
anything,
it, right.
He loves soccer, and I'm not a sports fan. So if he's watching soccer, I watch it.
Okay. Very
Because
good.
he does so much,
Right.
that for me,
Right.
that I don't even know if he likes doing it or not, and he just does it,
Right.
So it all, makes me, I don't know if it'll work for you, but for me, it makes me happy, right? Happiness is being able to help others.
Yes.
There's something that I feel deep down in here in my heart when I help others.
Yes.
And, helping others could be anything from helping somebody to pay what I do a lot is help with tuition.
Okay.
And so, I have 40 students that I pay their tuition.
Wow.
But if, I receive a call, someone gets, kicked out of their apartment, and and I can help, and and I help them to find a place to get shelter over there. It makes me feel good.
Yes, service.
So so for me, it's a number of things. Happiness for me is walking down the street in Miami and the sun is shining on my face.
Yes.
And I feel good.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So it's not all about money.
Right.
Right. And again, I want to place emphasis on the fact that I love money.
Right.
But what do you do with the money?
Right.
Right. You need to do things that makes you happy. I love nice cars.
Yes.
And so I go out and I buy a nice car and it makes me happy.
Right.
So, so it's a number of things that brings happiness to me.
Okay. So health is wealth. Wealth is health. Wealth is happiness. It sounds like just being able to be of service to others, being able to make decisions for yourself.
Right.
And to help those in need when you choose Right. Absolutely. Okay. So this has been absolutely wonderful. I am so glad that divine timing and alignment allowed us to do this interview in person instead of via Skype. The energy is very important. You can feel it. And also thank you again so much for inviting me to the Prime Minister's dinner. I had an absolutely fabulous time. I met some really, really nice people. It was just an overall great experience. You know, they say when you sit at a different table, the conversation will be different.
Yes.
And I was just in awe at how literally true that is, how much truth is in that statement, because the conversations that we had last night were just something that was there on another level. And here I am. I mean, we met through Facebook. So I'm grateful for our connection.
Goes to show you that Facebook is not all that bad.
It's
right?
not all that bad. Absolutely. I have to make sure I let my dad know that.
Yes.
He's always, stay off the internet, get off of that social media. And I met you through Facebook. This is our first time actually meeting in person. You invited me to the dinner. You agreed to do my podcast. Thank you for your yes.
Yes.
Your yes. Every time we speak, you're always, I may call you for one thing, and at the end of the conversation, you say just the right thing. And I don't know if you realize that, but you really inspire me. You really move me and encourage me. And I appreciate that. Thank you for your yes, your continual yeses, and stay tuned to the podcast. We have lots more, and I'm going to hold you to that podcast interview with the Prime Minister. I'm looking
I will make that happen.
forward to that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You've been listening to the American Cream Podcast, the #1 audio production show for people who want to achieve the American dream with cream. Love this episode of the American Cream? Head over to your favorite podcast platform to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. Thank you. For free resources and materials, go to theamericancreampodcast.com. Hyacinth Henderson is a registered representative of IFS Securities located in Atlanta, Georgia. FINRA, MSRB, SIPC. Any discussion of taxes herein is for informational purposes. You should consult with an attorney or an accountant concerning tax advice.